Shalom, and welcome back to B'nai Noach Academy, Thoughts on Life. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. Being that now we are in the 9-day mourning period, that is the first 9 days of the Hebrew month of Av, culminating with the 9th day, which is Tisha B'Av. Tisha in Hebrew means 9, which is the anniversary of the destruction of both temples, the first and the second. I will take this opportunity to elaborate somewhat on some of the aspects of the Holy Temple of Jerusalem and why this is important to us, to all of us, Jew and non-Jew alike. So if you look in the book of Kings, where it describes the construction of the first temple by King Solomon, if you look in Kings 1, Chapter 6, verse 4, it says, and he made for the house, meaning for the temple, windows narrow and broad. What does this mean? And why is it telling us how he made the windows? It doesn't tell us a lot of the other details because it obviously is not important to us. But from the fact that it does tell us this, tells us that this is very important to us. So what does this mean? Well, the sages in the Talmud explain, and actually, if you've ever been to Jerusalem or you've seen some of the ancient castles or forts, you've experienced this. You can see this in the King of David. You can see this in the walls, the old walls around Jerusalem, let's say by the Jaffa Gate or any of the gates. You'll see that the way they constructed the walls that are very, very thick, several feet deep of stone, several feet at least, they made on the outside a narrow crack, something like this, almost literally this size, a narrow crack, so you can't really shoot an arrow through it. And in the inside, the wall was beveled on a slant, on an angle that it widened inside. What it would do is the light would come in during the day and spread in. That way, it would pour the light, literally pour the light in the both directions, so now you can enjoy the sunlight and have light. This was a means of illuminating the corridors and the rooms, what have you. So this is the typical way of construction that they constructed these very thick, heavy fortified walls. However, in the Holy Temple, it was done in the opposite manner. On the inside of the structure was the narrow crack. On the outside was the beveling, the broadening of the walls in a manner that this was to symbolize, what was the idea behind it? That the light is coming out to the world from the inside of the temple and spreading to all sides of the world. As the Talmud says, the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, did not need any light. It was naturally illuminated by the virtue of the fact that it was the holy place of God's presence. It was light in there all the time. And for example, when they lit the menorah, when in the evening, the Kohen, the priest, had the obligation, the privilege of kindling the candelabra, the 7-branched menorah. And the Talmud asks, that they need the light. In fact, think about it. All the service in the Holy Temple was actually winding down at that point. This was one of the last steps of service for the day, and that's when they closed up shop for the whole night. So why would they light it now? If they needed the light, you light it earlier. If you need the benefit of the lamps of the menorah, they should have kindled it earlier. But the idea is, says the Talmud, and consistent with what we just said about the way the windows were shaped, that it was to symbolize that now as the world gets dark, the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, which is the source of God's eminence of energy and light to the whole world, is now going to give off more light to illuminate the darkness. So for all of us, this is a terrible loss. Now we have to find that light within ourselves. In fact, it is brought down in the Kabbalah and even hinted in many places in the Talmud, that is the revealed part of the Torah, that each and every individual is like a small holy temple, is like a Bet HaMikdash, an edifice of holiness for God. if we in fact bring holiness into ourselves, we have the various chambers. Think about it. Think about the Holy Temple. In general, was a holy place, but of course it had different levels, different tiers of holiness and restriction of where one can and cannot enter. Think about it. In the human body is the same thing. You have the external organs of a person, external body parts, and then you have the internal ones. And within the internal ones, you have those that are extremely refined and sensitive. Think of the heart, think of the brain, think of the kidneys, think of the liver versus other parts of the body. So the idea of it is that each and every one of us now has to struggle. We could, but you still have to struggle that much more to find the light within us and to shine out the light to the world. Whereas in the time of the Bet Mikdash, it was a natural thing. And the times when the Holy Temple stood, it was so natural, the world received its light, not just physically, that was just a symbol, but spiritually and even emotionally, from the holiness of the Bet HaMikdash. So we all have to mourn the loss of the Bet HaMikdash. We all have to mourn the loss of the Holy Temple, but of course, not for the purpose of being sad, but rather for the purpose of us jumping into action. This should motivate us to A, find the holiness within us, B, shine out our light of goodness and kindness and holiness to the rest of the world, and C, bring about through all that the actual rebuilding of the Holy Temple, where God's presence will once again be felt in a literal manner. God willing, this should happen very soon, speedily in our times.